Hi, and welcome to Studio Access. I'm Larry Walters, and I'll be your host today. Today we welcome as our guest Ron Gagliardi, the candidate for town councilman here in Cheshire, as I understand.
Town council at large, yes.
Good. Well, welcome to the show, Ron. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, you were town councilman some time ago, as I remember.
Yes, in the early 80s, I served for 2 years, and it was because of something that we have on our charter called the minority provision. And
What's that?
Here's how that works, because I'm sure a lot of people don't know about this. In the town of Cheshire, there are 9 council people. There's 4 district council people, and then there's 5 at large. If there's one party that gets all of the positions, like 9 and the other party doesn't get any, you have to have 2 of the minority party added onto the council. And then therefore 2 of the majority party don't get to serve. So if there were 9 Republicans, say, and they had all won, 2 of them have to not get onto the council, and 2 Democrats are put in their place. So when I was on, 1 Democrat had won on her own. I was the largest at-large vote getter as a Democrat. So I got to be the second person because of the minority provision.
For our viewers today, tell us a little bit, what does at-large mean?
Okay, in a town or city, they have districts. So in Cheshire, there's 4 districts. So they divided the town up somehow. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And then there's 5 at-large, meaning you can vote for them from all over the town. Everybody in town can vote for those 5 people.
So tell us why you want to get on the council. What are some of the things you want to do?
Well, I've always believed in public service, and starting with my parents. My parents were always encouraging me to volunteer, help people, do what I could to help my town, to help my neighborhood. So I wanted to help Cheshire. So I joined the JCs in 1973. We moved here in 72. And the JCs were very helpful to me because they were a total service organization. And they believed in helping people to become better leaders through service. And we had something called the JC Creed, which we went through it at every meeting, at the start of every meeting. And one of the lines was, "Service to humanity is the best work of life." And when you drill that into your head week after week, it really sticks. And so we did a lot of projects, and I enjoyed doing projects and helping the town of Cheshire.
And JCs are a wonderful organization.
Yes, unfortunately, Cheshire's chapter disbanded. They didn't have enough membership after a while, but it's still going in some of the cities and towns of Connecticut and around the country.
Excellent. Now, also, you had a chance to serve when you were in college, as I remember, in your fraternity?
Yes, we had a fraternity. I had a couple of fraternities at Southern. It was Southern Connecticut State College at the time. Now it's Southern Connecticut State University. Our fraternity that I was in was Sigma Zeta Chi. And by the way,
say that 3 times fast.
Yes, when you hear the word fraternity, some people start thinking, "Oh yeah, all these drinking, carousing people." I didn't drink then, and I don't drink now. So that's the kind of fraternity brother I was. And we did service projects. One of the ones that I remember being highlighted in my memory was there was a Civil War statue in New Haven, and it hadn't been cleaned in a long time. And we decided we would go out and clean that.
How did it work out?
Very well, very shiny.
Was it a metal statue?
It was a metal statue, yes.
I see, good.
Yeah.
Now, what are some of the things you want to do on the council? You and I talked a little bit about a blight ordinance. Is this something that's active here in Cheshire?
Yes, I've been thinking about this for quite some time, even before I was thinking about running for council again. As you drive around town, there's a few places, little homes, that look like they haven't been occupied for some years, and they're really dilapidated. And I started asking around. People in the neighborhood didn't like that they had these things in their neighborhood. And also, some of the council people that I talked to, Peter Talbot was one of the folks that I know. Went to Peter, and he said, "Well, they've been avoiding a blight ordinance for a while, but they're starting to talk it up." So when I get on the council, I would be one of the voices in favor of having a blight ordinance.
So how would it be shaped? What would it do?
Well, you would have to say something about how the houses have to be maintained. It's kind of like in the historic district area. You can't have stuff looking kind of strange. You got to have houses that are in good shape. So in a blight ordinance, you have to say that at a certain point, if you have 15 cars dilapidated in your backyard, that's not going to work. There's certain things that you have to say have to be done. And when you start seeing that, someone has to go around and say, "This is not allowed, you're going to have to change this." And sometimes they're willing to change it, sometimes they're not, sometimes you have to go to court. It can be interesting.
So somewhat like restrictions in a home development.
Yes, yeah.
So it's very common in large developments.
Yeah.
Now also, you mentioned something about telephone poles earlier. Tell us about is there something going on with telephone poles here in Cheshire?
Yes, there is. When I drive to the studio here on Route 10, there's a series of telephone poles, probably about a mile from here, on the right-hand side coming from the south part of town. And they're tilting over maybe, I don't know, 5, 10 degrees, maybe like that. And I look at these things and I say, that's not good, because they're placed in a spot on the road or off to the side of the road where there's not a lot of soil to keep them in. And I'm thinking that might have something to do with the fact that they're tilting. So I kept on seeing these things, and I said, well, how can I help that? And I thought, well, it's a state route. It's probably the state that's going to be in charge of figuring out what to do, but it's probably not going to be the state itself. It's going to be whatever company's in charge of the telephone poles. So I went to Peter Talbot again. He's my councilman of choice. And he said, well, Ron, it's a state route. You know, I can't do much. I'm a councilman. It's town. I said, yeah, but, you know, maybe you can start asking around and, you know, see what you can do. So I'm not sure if it helped. And I'm not sure if he enlisted someone else's aid. But sure enough, there were crews out there fixing the tilting telephone poles.
So are they resetting them in the
Yeah,
ground?
they take one out, I guess, and they put another one in, but not in the same hole. So there might be a way to use the existing pole, because the poles themselves are not in bad shape. But I think I saw there's poles like outside on the side of the road, get ready to go in. So
is this project halfway done now at this point, or is it just getting started?
I think about half of them are done. I think there were like 6 or 7, and maybe 3 or 4 have been replaced.
So it certainly looks better when they're done.
Oh yeah, and then you won't have anything falling down in a storm.
Right.
Hopefully not. Yeah.
Now, I know your commitment to Cheshire is quite long-standing. You've done a number of things over the years, and we'll cover some of those.
Yeah.
But also recently you mentioned that you're now working with the Cheshire Magazine. Tell us about that.
Yes, that was something that I didn't expect to have happen to me at age 70. There's a magazine in Southington that's been there for 6 years called Southington Magazine. And there's a magazine in Wallingford that's been there for 3 years called, of all things, Wallingford Magazine. And it turns out the same person is in charge of both of those magazines. He's the editor of Southington. Another person named Tarn is the editor of the Wallingford one. And they decided that they should have a Cheshire magazine. And by coincidence, last year I had asked for a meeting with Tarn Granucci, the editor of the Wallingford one, and I asked him if I could write for the Wallingford magazine. And I showed him some of the stuff I had written. I had done the Images of America Cheshire book and some articles for various newspapers and stuff. And he looked at them and he said, yeah, these are good. And I never heard from him. So I thought, well, that didn't do me much good. But then when they decided to do Cheshire Magazine, it turns out when I called him up when I heard about it, he said, we were thinking of you. And so we had a meeting, and now I'm the editor of the Cheshire Magazine.
So what are some of the things the magazine's going to cover? How do you
Well,
see
it turns out that it's really my kind of magazine. It's only positive news, so there's no reporting of negative happenings. And I have this philosophy of OPAO, only positivity in and out. So to have that in the magazine that I'm in charge of, that's really a plus. And so they talk about businesses. They have stories about the history of the town. They have stories about people's interesting jobs. So it's just a human interest magazine.
Will it be free of charge? Or?
It is free. That's a very good question. Yes. It turns out that I think there's 11,000 homes and businesses in Cheshire, and they're going to print 12,000 of the magazines, and then they will mail them to all the homes and businesses, and then they'll have some left over to put in doctors' offices and different places around town. And it's full color, and it's free, and it's positive.
So, and who's paying for it? Is it
advertising?
Advertising.
Yeah, it's 50% advertising and 50% articles.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So this is something that, can people advertise themselves in it as a sort of a swap kind of a thing if they wanted to advertise for selling some of their services, yard sales or things like that?
I don't know. I don't think that happens. Well, I don't even want to get too much into it because we're not allowed to sell things on cable, so got to be careful.
Well, good to know.
Yeah.
What about how often does it get published?
It's 4 times, once every season, and then I think there's one that comes out in Christmas time or holiday time if you want to be better. State it better. Yeah.
Now you've served before. You mentioned that you were on the town council. Also, you were the Cheshire Democratic Town Committee member at some
Yes.
point. Tell us about that.
I joined probably maybe early 70s for the first time, and I was in charge of public relations for a long time. I got off every so often. I think I've been on for the last 10, 15 years. Recently, though, they asked if I could turn into what they call an ex officio member because they wanted to open up some spots for people to be on the town committee. So I'm now an ex officio member of the town committee, but I still go to meetings and I still can vote. It's an interesting process.
What are some of the things you're doing there?
Well, let's see, I'm still on public relations, and one of the things that I was helping with during the last campaign was getting folks to write letters to the editor. Because in Cheshire, we have the Cheshire Herald that covers the election and also obviously the town happenings. And we wanted to get some things in there from Democrats to show our point of view. And sometimes folks need a little prodding. They do have an idea, you know, they want to say something, but they don't know exactly how to say it, and they're a little reticent to do it. So we would call folks up and say, hey, how about this? You are interested in this? Why don't you write a letter? We'll even help you. So that's what we were doing.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Now, also, you tell us about your interim director of adult education.
Yes,
that was the magazine.
That was interesting. It turns out that the adult ed director had left the position, and I guess they were having trouble filling it because I remember it being unfilled for quite a while. So I went to the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, and I asked them if they would consider me to be the interim director, because I was pretty good at writing stuff and I was pretty good at setting up courses for various groups. And so they said, well, we'll put you in as an interim director. And I got to be the interim director, and I got to design the booklet with all the courses, and I got to put a bunch of courses in there. And every night we were open, I had to go out and make sure that the courses were running well and that the people were coming to classes. It was quite an interesting job.
How many classes were being run, roughly?
I think there were probably 30 classes.
Really? Great.
But not all at once. Sometimes like 2 or 3 would run, and then they would stop, and then 2 or 3 more would come in.
What are some of the more popular subjects?
There was one about accounting, how to do your own accounting for your own family.
Like QuickBooks or something? Or?
I don't think it was with QuickBooks. I think the gentleman who had taught the course, John Pirtle, who's still in town, he's an accountant. And he had edited a book about how to do all the accounting that you would need to do for your business or for yourself. And that was a very popular course. I think that's still running.
Any other courses that were particularly popular?
Well, there was getting your high school equivalency degree.
Okay.
And that was interesting because these folks really wanted to get that degree. And actually my niece was one of the people in the course. And I remember looking through the math that they were doing. And I was thinking, I'm the intern director. I don't think I could pass the math course.
So
yeah,
you need to take a few.
Yeah, I probably should have, yeah.
Any particular focus going forward that the curriculum's going to take? Any new subjects that you're looking to?
Well, I'm no longer the interim director. They now have another person in there. And I haven't really looked at the book much lately because I haven't been deciding to take any courses.
Excellent. So now you jumping back on your town service. You're focused on the telephone poles. You're looking at the blight ordinance, and also this comes out of the fact that you were on a beautification committee at some point.
Yes, I started something. Let me see. What did we call it? The Smile a While Festival. And our goal was there were 2 other people on the committee with me. Someone named Joyce Saltman and someone named Kim. It's gone. Anyway, these folks were helping me to make people smile all the time, every day. So we had jokes on television. I ended up giving my car away to make somebody smile. We had an interesting bunch of fun for the entire year that we did the Smile a While Festival. Kim Haskell, I knew it was in there. Yes, so that started, that went to the Pride in Cheshire Committee, and then from there it went to the Beautification Committee. And because I guess I was instrumental in getting stuff going, a friend of mine who was actually a Republican on the committee nominated me as a Democrat to be the chairperson. So I was the first chairperson for the Beautification Committee. And one of my activities was to get dogwood trees up and down the main streets of Cheshire, up and down Route 10 and West Main Street. And I was told that dogwood trees are on the way out. There's some kind of a fungus or a lichen or something that was making them not too good. So the arborist that we had hired said some kind of a flowering pear would be better. So any flowering pears that you see up and down Route 10, it started with the Beautification Committee.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
What are some of the other things that they're focused on?
Well, they had a nomination for the beautiful tree of the month, I think, or the active tree. I don't know, some kind of a term for trees. And it was interesting, and people would nominate it, and then they would get a plaque.
Already did.
And that was it, yeah.
Does the committee also work with the garden club or the local
I guess they
clubs?
do. And a lot of time people who are in the garden club are named the beauty spot of the month because they're the folks who really know how to garden. So,
So they know their stuff.
yeah.
Great. Now also, back in education, as I understand, you were a founder and advisor to the Cheshire High School History Club. You're a history buff.
Yes, I was the municipal historian for Cheshire for 9 years. And during that time, I was paying careful attention to Cheshire High School. Both of my kids went to Cheshire High School and graduated from there, Gina in '93 and Jeff in '99. And my wife works there as a hall monitor, and I've been there as a substitute and an instructional assistant. And I said, you know, I really like the history of this place. We got to make sure it's preserved. So I started the History Club, which, by the way, stands for Historians in Service to Our Recent Years. Because I like.
Wait a minute, okay, run that past me again.
I like acronyms. Historians in Service to Our Recent Years.
That's very clever.
Yes. Well, I can't say yes. I think you might be right. I don't know. So our group, and it's usually between 6 and 10, does things to preserve Cheshire history, Cheshire High School history. And we cut articles out of the paper. We put displays up. We did a survey of what the kids were thinking. Recently, we had a bench dedicated at Mixville Park, because Mixville Park is very prominent in the memories of Cheshire High School kids as they went from younger kids to being in high school. And so there was a Judge Oberst in town. When he was an attorney, he was responsible for the town being able to purchase Mixville Park. And so I decided that we should honor him. And so now there's a bench honoring Judge Oberst in Mixville Park. And it was due to the efforts of getting funds donated by the kids on the history committee, History Club.
Wow, very nice. How old is Cheshire High School? Is it a long-standing?
Well, let's see. It started back in the 1890s.
Really?
And it was in a mansion where Humiston School is now. Most people don't know that was the original site of it.
Huh.
Actually, even before that, it was in a couple of places around town. Then that stopped in, I think, 1904. And the people from Cheshire had to go to Waterbury High School or Hamden High School or Southington. This high school that we're thinking of now is started in 1953. And I think the first graduating class was 55. And we're still going.
And it's got a great reputation.
It does, yes. It's been on lists of, the top 500 of nationwide, yeah.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Now, maybe part of your work at the school maybe led to your work as a constable?
Well, let's see. Constable is an interesting position. In towns where they don't have a police department, constables can actually arrest people. In a town like Cheshire where we have a police department, constables can serve papers.
Oh.
So that's what
For
I've
lawsuits,
done.
you mean?
Yes, for lawsuits.
Interesting.
And, I've
like
served,
a sheriff?
Yes, and I've served a few. It's a situation where you're not always sure what you're going to encounter when you're trying to give someone these papers. You obviously have seen TV and movies where they don't get treated very well. One time I had to go out into the woods to get somebody and give him his papers. And when you're out in the woods with someone that you're not sure how he's going to react, it's a little bit dicey. But he was fine. There was no problem.
Great. Well, what else does a constable do?
I'm not actually sure. I know that they can serve the papers, and I know when there's no police department that they can arrest people. Other than that, I don't think they do much.
When there is a police department, do they actually work with the police department and help in some of their functions?
No, I think the police would look at it as like an interloper. Who needs this person?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What about the junior achievement work you've done in the past?
Junior achievement is an interesting process and an interesting group. These are businessmen who volunteer to proctor companies, to mentor the kids in the companies. And it starts in junior year of high school, and you can be in it as a junior and as a senior. I was in it both my junior and senior year way back when. And having been there and enjoyed the knowledge that I got about how to set up a business, I determined that it really should have to happen in Cheshire High School. So way back in, I think it was the 80s, we started a junior achievement chapter at Cheshire High School. And it wasn't like a huge success, and it didn't carry over to the next year, but at least it gave the town a taste of what junior achievement could do. And it's doing well in other parts of the state, and especially cities. So it's a really good program.
You know, today there's a real push, not just in schools, well, and particularly in graduate schools, for entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Is this something that Junior Achievement is looking at?
Definitely. That's what it does. It teaches students to be an entrepreneur. And you set up your own company, you sell stock, you decide what kind of a product you're going to produce, you go out and sell it, you promote it. So it's just like being in business.
You learn marketing skills?
Yeah, marketing, yeah.
Fundraising, perhaps?
I don't know if it's actually fundraising, but you'd have to raise money to support what the cost of whatever you're producing is. Yeah.
And then I would imagine you actually get to a point where you're either delivering the service or a product, you're selling that, and that perpetuates from there.
Yes, then you pay a dividend to the stockholders.
And the stockholders are usually the
parents, friends. Right. Yeah, it's not a big deal. You know,
friends
it's like $10 stocks, or it's like 50 cents or $1.
Well, even today in all the startup community organizations, it's always family and friends that start these, and then they go for their seed round and Series A and Series B. So good. Yeah. What about this Patriot Trail? Tell us about that.
Ah, yes. There's a guy in town named John White, and he's like a super patriot, and he wanted Cheshire to really stand out on the map as a place that patriotism is something that's really honored. And so I said, well, maybe I can figure out a way to help him do this. And I knew there were lots of places in town that had a patriotic attachment, places where there were monuments to people who had fallen in battle. And so I went to John and I said, maybe we could put together like a group of these. And I guess I had it wasn't an original idea. I think there was a Freedom Trail in Boston that I once walked. And I said, this is the kind of thing that we could do. So we did. So he did the research on all the sites that he could find in town. And he wrote it up, and I helped him write it up, and I took the photos.
Was it ever aired anywhere, published?
The Cheshire Herald did a whole front page about it. And they then, inside the whole issue, they put the photos and the interesting caption about each place. And it was recognized as an official Millennium Project by Hillary Clinton committee back way 1999 to 2000.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, she was the wife of the president, I think, then, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was when she was the wife of the president, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me also about, you mentioned earlier about, I know you've done a lot of publishing, and you mentioned about this program about the Images of America.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, there's a company called Arcadia Publishing, and they publish these books for local areas or local information or a team sport person, like the Yankees, let's say, for example. So they wanted to do the Cheshire one, and I was suggested as a person who could write that. And so I had to submit a sample of my writing, had to talk about the demographics of the town, and when they looked at what I sent, they said, okay, you can do the book. So I had to sign a contract. I told them that they told me that I had to have it by a certain date, and I had to be responsible for getting all the images and making sure that everything was correct. And it took quite a while. I think it was about 1,000 hours of research. And I got to publish it in 2001.
And where's it been distributed?
Well, it's mostly sold in Cheshire, but they sell it like at Barnes & Noble, and it's on Amazon.
Amazon, right.
I actually bought one that was my cousin's. They bought it from me to support me, and then they didn't need it anymore, and I didn't know it was my cousin's, but when I got it, it was my signature inside the Cheshire book. Ah. Also got to do the Naugatuck one in 2004.
So do you do book signings at the library?
I do. Yes, I've done book signings at the library, at Hine Hardware. You wouldn't expect to do a book signing at a hardware store. Costco. Yeah.
Tell me about the hardware store. Yeah, that's a surprise. Wow.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Sally Bowman, was at the time one of the managers there, and she said, "Well, we have a lot of people come in. Why don't you do a book signing here?" And it was popular. You know, a bunch of people came in.
Now I know you have a long-standing history with Cheshire. I know you've been you're a life member of the Cheshire Historical Society, in the Land Trust as well. And I understand you were even called Mr. Cheshire.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I guess this was like in the 70s. I was at JC, and they had this program to name Mr. Cheshire. It was a fundraiser for the band, I think. And so a friend of mine from the JCs called me up and said, Ron, I want to enter this, and I want to have someone enter it with me, and you're the only person courageous enough to do this. I entered, I won. So I did a series of imitations, and I don't even want to get into it, but it was interesting.
Was the competition stiff?
It was, yes, yes. Mr. Dick Bartlam was one of the people I had to compete against. They named a park after him. So
what are they going to name after you?
I think there's a sewer grating that's going to have my name on it. That's about it. Storm drain, I don't know.
Mr. Humorous.
Yeah, oh yeah, right.
Well, actually, you roll that into your hosting of a show. You often do a show on Cable Access, don't you?
Yes, it's called 30 Minutes with Ron, and I did not name it. People think I'm enough of an egotist that I would probably name it that. I didn't name it. A young lady who decided to produce a show asked me to host it, and she named it. And so I have people come on who have interesting occupations, who are doing interesting things in town. One of the first shows was an anti-bullying show with a policeman and a social worker. That's what it does. It lets people know what's going on.
Good, good.
Yeah.
So it gets out the message in a number of different areas.
Yep.
Tell us some fun things. I know you worked with the Cartoon Museum at one point.
Yes, I was the assistant director at the Cartoon Museum, the Barker Character, Comic, and Cartoon Museum. And I also taught cartooning there. So on Saturdays afternoon, in the middle of their art gallery, their cartoon art gallery, we conducted cartooning classes. And it was a little hectic. The kids got to learn some fun stuff in a beautiful environment. I mean, we had all these cartoons to look at, and some of them did very, very good stuff. Very good, I can't say stuff. They did good art.
Good art.
It's much better than stuff.
Give us a little insight here. How does one cartoon, how do you become a cartoonist?
I became a cartoonist because I started working with one. I was an elementary art teacher, and I never taught cartooning to the kids because I was kind of afraid of it. Having worked with a cartoonist and watched what he did, I learned some little tricks, techniques, and I started to be able to teach those. Basically, it's making faces, and you can even make your own face in a mirror and try to get that onto a page. I now do something with letters and numlets. I call them letters and numbers. I call them numlets, and you can make cartoon characters out of numbers and letters by putting them together. That's the easiest way I found a cartoon.
So do you actually do descriptions along with them, or is it just the picture?
Well, it depends. Like, I'm working with a former student of mine who I had in 6th grade, K through 6. He's 40 now. And I design the cartoons and caption them, and he does the cartoon itself. My friend Al Lowenheim was the person I originally learned from. He had the assignment to do a book called How to Father, back in the 80s, I guess it was. And he said, here, Ron, you take this 400-page manuscript. You're the funny one of the two of us. You find out what's funny in it. You draw the cartoon in your style, write the caption. I'll do it in my style, bring it to Dr. Dotson. Whatever he laughs at will be in the book. And it was in the book.
Now, I understand also you're a justice of the peace.
Yes.
Do you marry people?
I do. I've married, I think, 5 couples. Yes.
Are they still together?
They're still together. And also, I was what I call a vowdiographer.
What's that?
I was a videographer. I was a professional videographer from 1980 to, like, I don't know, till a couple years ago. So I would do the vows as the justice of the peace, but I would also videotape them at the same time. So I was a videographer of the vows, hence a vowdiographer.
That's got to be original. Is that in the Guinness Book or something?
No, they don't like me.
And I understand you were a town crier. Top things off.
Yes, I always thought, I like history. I was a town historian. And I thought, Cheshire doesn't have a town crier. They need one. I went to the town council, and I said, could you name me the official town crier of Cheshire? I'll get the costume and the tricorner hat and the bell, lead the parades. And they said, well, we don't want to name you the official town crier, because then somebody might come and want to be the official cobbler of Cheshire. So we'll name you the honorary town crier.
He's got it.
I cannot enter town crier competitions because I'm not the official town crier. I'm just the honorary town crier.
Well, Ron, we just have a couple of seconds left. Anything else you want to share with us as we close?
Well, I'm hoping that people look at me and say, well, he seems pretty creative, and he might actually do a good thing, doing a good job as a town councilman at large. He's tried to help out before, and he's looking at things now with the blight ordinance and stuff. He might help us out. Maybe we could vote for him.
Great. Well, Ron, thank you for taking some time to join us today. Really
My pleasure.
appreciate it. Help us to get you know a little bit better. That's great. Thanks again. Good.
I had a ball.
Good. And thank you very much for watching today. So I'm Laurie Walters with Studio Access. Thank you.